Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another Photo Mishmash. This one being broadcast live April 22nd, 2020. Happy Earth Day. This is going to be a packed show. We've got to talk about the Canon EOS R5. It has been more officially announced, and we have some unbelievable specs to talk about. Plus, Steve and David are joining me once again, as I'm so happy, and we're all going to be sharing life-changing gear and a Lego set that I have to buy, and maybe you want it too, along with reviewing your photos and so much more. So everybody, thanks for joining us. And I'll start with David. David Carr, how are you doing today?
Oh, I'm pretty good. I have some days, I think all of us do, some days where you're just a little more blah. And I think the last couple of days have just been a little bit that way. But I mean, just being honest, being transparent. But, I'm trying to stay motivated, I've got a lot of stuff coming in that I need to take care of. So that keeps me busy. So
very nice. Very cool. Yeah. And Steve, how are you?
I'm good. That was me last week, David.
I remember. Yeah.
I was really blah. Actually, the last couple of weeks have felt that way. Today, I feel kind of invigorated. I don't exactly know why, but it's like 70 degrees and sunny outside. Did a little yard work over the past few days. It just felt good to be out there working. And I know we're going to probably talk about this briefly, but David is home. Yeah. And that really kind of jazzed me up yesterday. My daughter said to me a few days ago, she's like, or to my wife, actually, she said, this thing with David is really getting to Steve, isn't it? So she noticed that I just was kind of down on that whole thing. So maybe that's got something to do with it. I don't know, but good to be with you folks.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. And yeah, it's great. You mentioned it. Let's start the show off by saying that our good friend, David McKay, is out of the hospital. He was in there. Actually, 2 different visits to the hospital. The second involved several days worth of staying with COVID-19. And, as my mom said, that for many of us, this pandemic isn't going to feel real until there's somebody we know diagnosed with this.
Yeah.
My mom's pretty smart. I love her. And I think that really did hit home for me as well. I felt the seriousness of it, at some point during the past month, but with David and Allie both catching this, it became very, very real. And David was very sick. And he is on the mend. I talked to him this morning. He's doing much better. He's certainly still feeling weak and not great, but he's in the good direction now, which is great. It's just really good.
Yeah.
And I think it was after Steve, you and I recorded the image reviews on Friday, and one of our fantastic members reached out to you and said, hey, a lot of people are posting about David and Allie. Could we start a little thread for them? And I was like, oh, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
They said that to you, and I said, yeah, let's do that, and put together. And between that thread and also just people posting on their own, first off, I spoke with both David and Allie about this, and just how touched they were by how much impact their lives have had on other people and leading these photography tours around the world. Just awesome. And then just the sweet and uplifting nature of everybody keeping them in their thoughts and prayers was just really, really cool. And then of course, people sharing pictures from this trip or that trip. Somewhere years ago, there's a woman I haven't gone on a trip with since 2016, over 4 years ago, and posted and said, oh, I had a great trip with them and just hope they're doing better soon. And it's just really, really cool to see that, and to kind of feel the support of the community behind them as well.
Absolutely. It was such a weight lifted, I know, for all of us, knowing that he was going to come home and that he was on the mend. And because, this thing is scary and you don't know really where it's going to go. I mean, nobody does, obviously a lot of people have survived it, but I was telling my wife last night that, everybody's focused on the mortality rate, but that's not the only factor here. That's obviously the ultimate thing we don't want for anyone, but this is a big deal. I mean, David was in the hospital 2 times for the same illness. And that's bigger than the flu. That's bigger than some nasty cold or it's a big deal. And the fact that he's just one out of, many, many people, it's a big deal.
Yeah, yeah. And I heard from another friend and member of ours. They shared this privately with me, so I'll keep their name private. But they have a relative that had it as well, and now has recovered, but will probably have long-term heart implications from this as well. So yes, it is very, very serious.
Yeah, and that's something that we just don't even know. You keep seeing these little headlines here and there about what are the long-term implications of this thing, and that's kind of a scary deal. And to Carr's point, you get a lot of people surviving this, but our bodies, as strong as they are, can be extremely fragile in certain situations, and it just because it tends to be comorbid diseases or older patients and stuff like that tend to lose their lives to this thing. That's not always the case. And
yeah, that's right.
You get rushed down to the hospital a second time. Yeah. Things start to get real serious real fast. Mm-hmm. And selfishly, I started to, we talk about the impact that the McKays have on so many people, and man, that is the truth. And our clients have just been outstanding in terms of
amazing
scripts. And I mean, because they're just trying to hold on to their business in addition to fighting off this virus. And fortunately, the clients have really stepped up to say, we got your back. We will reschedule. It's okay.
Yeah.
And that's a huge relief. But, selfishly for me, I've always seen my instructor role as probably my favorite thing that I do with photography, getting to see other countries, getting to meet new friends, getting to teach. It's very, very rewarding. And it's always been a long-term haul for me. I mean, I could see traveling with the McKays and teaching photography 15 years from now, various places, and telling all these stories about all the years. And then all of a sudden there could possibly be a finite end to that. And you're just, wait, that's like, what do I do with the rest of my life? And so that's why I say selfishly, but really it all stems from the friendship. And I mean, David is a brother. He's family. Yeah. And so that was a rough deal. And I'm just really, really happy to see him home.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. Let's all toast to their continued improvements, and to everybody who's watching health and success. Woo-hoo.
Cheers.
My question is, when can we start teasing David about Allie being so much stronger that she never had to go to the hospital? Is it too soon for that? It might be. I didn't say it.
Too soon. It's coming though. It's coming. So,
gentlemen, what are you drinking tonight?
Go ahead, Carr. What do you have?
It's my martini. It's just the dirty martini. It's kind of the go-to. I don't know why. And a lot of people are like, how could you drink olive juice? But I like it.
Oh, Renee loves those, man.
So there you go.
2 nights ago, she loves it.
I get it. Like, why would you like that? But it's like sushi. Some people are like, how could you eat sushi? It's like, I don't know. It defies logic, but it's good. So
yeah, a good dirty martini. I mean, it's just like people who say they don't like cats. I think they've never met a nice cat.
Yeah, I agree.
Dirty martini. You probably have had bad dirty martinis.
There are a lot of bad ones. They're not easy to make right, but I've got a good recipe.
Maybe prove you wrong on the cat theory, though, Toby, because I had 2 lovely cats and lost them about a year ago. And I don't like cats. I still don't like cats.
It's okay.
Yeah, it's fine.
It's fair enough.
We all know you're a schmo. What are you drinking, Steve?
So I've got what's called a Brooklyn cocktail here. This is kind of unusual, but a friend of mine taught me the recipe. And it's 2 ounces of rye whiskey, 1 ounce of dry vermouth, and then 1/4 ounce of Amaro. I actually use Campari, and then 1/4 ounce of maraschino liqueur. And look at how beautiful that color is. Anyway, it's an outstanding drink. I'm glad he showed it to me. It's kind of a cousin to the Manhattan, just not as high class. Called the
I only recognized about 30% of what you just said. Anyway,
yeah.
Some of those
nodded.
It's like when you go to a nice restaurant and it's like steamed broccoli with, and then there's some French word for something no one's ever heard of. You're like, oh, that sounds good.
Well, Carr, you'd be happy to know. Actually, my cocktail of choice tonight was going to be blackened rye whiskey neat, which is standing, and blackened is the Metallica rye that came out. Dave Pepper.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And dude, it is off the charts good. It is so good. I don't mix it with anything. I just drink it neat.
That's
super
cool.
a huge Metallica fan, huge Lars fan because I'm a big David Carr fan.
Yeah.
And anyway, that was going to be the drink, but because we're celebrating the McKay's home, I decided to make something a little fancier.
Nice.
And Chris made me a Moscow Mule, which is what traditionally a ginger beer with vodka or gin. Vodka. But we don't have ginger beer, but we have kombucha. It is a kind of hippie version of a Moscow Mule, and I love it. Plus a little bit of mint from our garden.
Nice.
That sounds awesome, actually.
And maybe a splash of orange juice. It is quite good. It doesn't really taste like there's much alcohol in there, so I don't know. It might not be.
Is it made with real bits of mule?
I might. Yes, 33% of half a mule. Yes. Okay. Yeah. So that's quite good. And also just hippie Earth Day. So happy Earth Day to everybody. Today is Earth Day.
And hey,
right.
You don't have to be a hippie to celebrate Earth Day. Happy Earth Day, everybody. I am not a hippie at all. Kobe is. I'm not, but I love Earth Day.
I'm glad you made that clarification.
Yeah.
All right. We've moved through the chit chat section. That'll return some because we like to do that. That's part of what the show is. And if you're watching and you're annoyed by that, then you're watching the wrong show.
These people stick with us through it. That's pretty awesome. It says a lot about you guys.
Do appreciate that.
It's ever since we brought you on, Carr.
Oh,
after 10 minutes, but since you've been on there hanging out with us.
Well, I'm honored. I don't even know what to say.
Seventh show together.
This is our 7th show together.
That's amazing.
I know that from I've been numbering the thumbnails.
That's awesome.
The behind the scenes naming convention of the thumbnails is Three Stooges episode 1, episode 2, episode, and so we're up to 7. This was the 7th thumbnail I had to make.
Nice.
That's good.
Yeah. Real quick, let's check in with each of you and see what you've been up to for the last week. David Carr, what do you want to share?
Oh man. So I did a photo shoot the other day in my backyard. My wife has been wanting some new portraits. It's been, I think the last time she had anything like that done was like glamour shots at the mall when she was like 17. So, so, it's been a minute. But we went out in the backyard and we have some really beautiful woods and it kind of like cool ivy growing everywhere. And, I'm really not a big fan of shooting in the woods, especially portraiture and stuff like that. Cause the green cast sometimes is a little weird, but it turned out really nice. I mean, I used flash, off-camera flash, and I'm really happy with them. So it gave me something to work on and work towards. And so that, and then just still trying to crank out these editing videos. So did one of those yesterday.
Nice. I saw the picture first a day or two ago. You posted that on Instagram. I absolutely love that Tanzania picture.
Thank you.
It's just such a simple, iconic picture, and I think edited so very nicely. And then I saw the edit video pop up on my feed this morning or last night. I can't remember.
That's cool. It was totally one of those. I'm sure you guys have plenty of these photos where and I'm sure all of you on, watching, you have these photos that you're like, I probably should just delete that. It's no good. And this was one of those. It was just sitting there. I'd never even done one thing with it. And I was like, well, I wonder if there's anything there to work with. And I couldn't believe where I was able to get it. And it didn't take that long. It wasn't, I didn't have to do a lot of local adjustments, but I'm just very happy with it. I very plan to do a little editing video on that one because that's one that I was going to throw away. And I really love to show people that, sometimes you have an awesome shot. You just don't realize that it's there. And a lot of times our clients on these tours, they think that we have like some magic power with our camera. And I'm like, no, we're all taking pretty much the same shots. We just have figured out how to manipulate them in the editing to get the best out of them. And that's what this is all about.
Yeah. Well said. So that's linked right down below in the show notes. If you're watching this video and it doesn't show you have show notes, just refresh. They're there now. I was a little delayed in getting them there. And of course, you can follow David on Instagram as well. Cool. Steve, what have you been up to?
Work-wise, as a photographer, not a whole lot. I've been taking a lot of pictures of the kids. They've been kind of playing over here and hanging out and stuff, but nothing professionally over the last 7 days, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But I mean, kind of to be expected right now, although the things are starting to pick up real estate wise. So I'm hoping to have a few more homes to start shooting here coming up. And that's been really kind of sparse over the last few weeks, as you can imagine anyway. But I've just been a homebody, man. I've been doing tons of yard work. I'm kind of growing a green thumb since we bought this place. It's got a big yard and it's beautifully landscaped, and I'm trying to do the previous owner justice by keeping it up. Bought myself a blower the other day and had a lot of fun playing around with that. I mean, it's like playing around with power tools in the yard.
It's fun.
So that's really it. Nothing too exciting to share with you guys, unfortunately.
Yeah, I did see, and I meant to get it into the show notes. I will at some point here. You guest spoke in Taylor Jackson's cool video on failure. Is that?
Yeah, he finally got that shared out. I was expecting it sometime in March, but I don't know. For those who watched it, you'll see in his intro, he kind of says, "This is the video that I was most nervous about editing," or something like that. He kind of held off on putting it out because the video is basically titled, "I'm a failure, now what?" or something like that. And he talks about going to Maui. Taylor Jackson, for those of you guys that aren't subscribed to his channel, I love giving him a shout out, by the way. He's got a lot of content that he's putting out. It's good stuff. And he's just a great dude. He's up in Canada. He's got a great sense of humor. And he's just a really, really nice guy. I know he and his wife, he was in Antarctica with us a few years back, January of 17. That's where we met. And then we stayed in touch, and he met Lindsay and they got married, and I've finally met Lindsay. Turns out I was in Maui when he was there. And he sends me a text, says, "Hey, I'd love to interview you for my channel. I'm doing a thing." It's all sponsored by Nikon. So he's doing these short little stories sponsored by Nikon. And interviewed me, talked about, photographing in Hawaii. And it's just a good video. It talks about, he went all the way out there and he came away after a few days with just a couple frames, and he was really disappointed. And the weather was pretty spotty while we were there. Fortunately, I got to stay a couple of weeks. I was there for my daughter's wedding and ended up some good shots. But I've felt that many, many times. And I'm going to kind of allude to this when we talk about our gear that changed our lives. But I think it was an important video. And I wanted to share it out there, not because I'm a guest speaker in it, but because it's good to talk about when you can't seem to get it right, or you just you have these high expectations and then you're let down. That can happen in Hawaii. And so go check it out. I linked it to the Facebook page and the private pen group. And if anybody wants to get in touch with me, I'm happy to share it along.
I did just while you were talking, I just added it to the show notes. So you click the show notes, and under your Steve section, it says, "I'm a failure," starring Steve Scurich. I thought that was is that accurate?
Why he titled it "I'm a Failure." Oh, and I forgot to mention, he and his wife have been long time wedding shooters, and they have all kinds of material out there about how to do weddings professionally. How to make 6 figures a year doing weddings, tons of great stuff. So check his channel out, give him some support, give him some love. He's a great dude. He's doing a really, really good job.
Yeah. I'd love to meet him in person someday. I love good content.
I mean, obviously you both know who each other are, but you just met in person. You love him. He's a good dude. Yeah.
There was I think last summer at Sony Condo, he was there. But I couldn't make that trip, so we missed each other. But we'll cross paths at some point in the future. Yeah. All right. And then if you missed it last night, I did another one of my Lightroom workshops. It was the 3rd in the series. As far as live workshops go, it was the 4th if you include the photographing or building websites for photographers. And it was kind of where I shoehorned little bits and pieces that didn't really fit into the flow of any of the other workshops. Really kind of some tips and tricks on getting and staying organized. And as I've been helping people one-on-one, 95% of my helping there is helping them find lost files and getting it all together. The file renaming system in Lightroom, I just really implore people to take advantage of that. And if you've now have 10,000 pictures that aren't renamed, I show you how to get in there and rename those very nicely. So they become instantly searchable, and then make use of the collections and some of the other tools in there as well. So that's all completely free to watch. It's linked right down below this video in the show notes. And of course, you can just find it on my channel. So
cool.
And Pen members, if you're watching this and you're a Pen member, well, thank you for your membership. I'm really proud of what we offer. If you're not watching this and you're not a Pen member, you could consider joining. We are offering this special discount right now. And I love the way David McKay said this the other day. It is time we all want to have a community that we belong to, or I think that appeals to many of us. And one of the real strengths of Pen is this fantastic community of people. And so you can consider joining at photorec.tv/pen. We'll get you there. And we are offering a discount for new members straight through us, $24 for the year. And I bring this up right now because the next live workshop that I'm going to be doing is going to be exclusively for Pen members. That will keep it small and intimate. And it's really just to answer your questions about Lightroom. So I'll be sitting here in the studio next Tuesday at 5 p.m. Pacific. So a little bit later to make sure everybody's got time to finish up their work stuff. You're going to pop in and you're going to ask questions, and I'm going to be there to answer them. That's my plan. So put that on your calendars if you have any interest in figuring out some stuff that Lightroom does. And this is, of course, all included with your membership as being Pen members. So
awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, let's dive into the part of the show. One of our favorites, all parts of the show I enjoy, especially the part where I show you the most epic Lego set and we debate the Canon R5 and what its price is going to be. But before we get to that, let's take a look at a few of your photos that you've submitted to us and give you some tips and tricks for improving them. So we're going to jump over to Lightroom, and here we are in Lightroom. And let's just start with this first picture Jeremy's got up here called Boreal Arches, which is cool. You're kind of combining the Aurora Borealis with the shape of these. And right away, I'm impacted by that title. It's nice. And I take a moment. I just, sometimes I just get into a talking mode. So I'm already talking, but just take a moment. And the first thing that strikes me, of course, is the beautiful green Aurora being so nicely reflected. And then look how it's framed, this one little boat sitting out there in the water.
Yeah.
It's kind of a neat thing.
Yeah.
I almost wonder if there's too much space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
It's awesome. It's just I almost feel like the left side could come in, like and yeah, what you're doing there for sure.
Yeah, I started to bring that left in. Yeah, and I don't know either, because then we're cutting that off. But maybe we have to make that sacrifice at some point, because I really do feel like we want to be in and really have that Aurora showing to us.
I like what you did there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
And I like that you can see some stars. I mean, it really.
Yeah.
That's a cool shot.
One of the things that I would suggest to Jeremy, if it's not that hard to do. It's just going to take a little bit of time using the clone tool. But so there's different kind of shades of water around that boat. I wish that there was lighter water around the back end of that boat so it really stood out. And you could work on that. The problem is you've got a reflection there. It's going to be pretty challenging. But just to the upper right part of that darker area of water, there's another dark area that cuts right through where the Aurora is reflecting on the water, to the right of the boat.
To the right of the boat, over here. Yeah.
And if you can clone that out of there and just create that lighter space with the green Aurora still reflecting in the water, I think that would just be one distraction taken out of there that it doesn't really need to be there. It's not totally necessary, but the cleaner that it is, the more you're going to recognize the boat. Because the first time I saw it, I didn't even, at first I was like, oh, you got to take that little island or whatever that's out. You got to take that out of there. And then I kind of zoomed in and noticed that it's a boat, which is totally cool. So then it becomes consideration of taking out some of the other distracting elements so you see that right away. This is an outstanding picture, by the way.
It really is.
I think, and it wouldn't take a lot to clone that little section out versus trying to work on that big section behind the boat.
Yeah. And sorry, Steve, do you mean right here where I'm motioning?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, just a little bit darkening.
And hey, I took a drink because really, you don't even need to flip this one. Just try to drink for the heck of it.
Yeah.
What about turning it like diagonal?
A Dutch angle on the water? Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's Carr's working on his little shtick now.
That's going to be my thing. I'm going to turn all of them like 45 degrees. Landscapes.
Speaking of drinks, I just noticed that mine has a little bit of a hippie-ish smell to it, but it tastes wonderfully.
Got some patchouli in it or something? Is it?
I was totally into that drink until you.
All right, yeah, this is beautiful, and I don't have any other suggestions.
Yeah,
very nice.
It's very nice, very nice.
Yeah. Let's move on to a Pam Case shot. And Pam, I just want to say, one, it's nice and big. Thank you for getting a nice and big JPEG image. And two, it was your iguana that we, we're a little harsh on the other week, being soft. This focus, you have nailed this.
Yeah.
Nice and sharp. I just have one comment, and I bet either David or Steve could guess. You want to guess? Crickets.
Maybe turn it 90 degrees.
Oh yeah, that could do that too. I just wish that we had all of this pedal here. You almost have all of it. Yeah. You almost have all of it. Well, your point. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, I'm not bothered by that. I would crop it in here, really fill up the frame with both of these flowers.
Yeah.
Go ahead and kind of cut them off here and there. What I want to see out of this photo though is I want to see more pop out of it, because I feel like it's fallen a little flat in the yellows. It's hard to distinguish between the petals when you're looking at it from further away. And I think if you increase, some of the texture and maybe the contrast and stuff like that, you'll see some more separation. It's going to look a lot more three-dimensional.
Yeah. What do we think there? Original.
Yeah.
After.
Yeah, that's nice.
Little edits. Yep. And if you even want to, Pam, you can get your brush tool and just up texture or clarity, and then just kind of go along the edges of some of these just to further, just where there is a little already texture to further enhance that and yellow it up. Yeah, I think that's a good suggestion. Cropping in, maybe I come in a little bit more so there's not that little piece.
Or you might
there.
Turn this 45 degrees, so, angle for
oops.
Super Fan 99 down there in Atlanta.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, you said that, and the first thing I thought was, well, what is the story here? Do we need that other rose in the shot? And and it's in a more of a bud-like state, so it kind of tells the story as these roses are coming along there. But
yeah,
it could work tilted a little bit more as well. Although I really feel like this is a strong subject, and so I don't want to put that too close to the edge.
Yeah, and I do think as it was delivered with just that one petal being cut off a little bit, it's like it wasn't cut off enough. But I do think there are times where if you're gonna cut into the subject, then really cut into it where it looks very intentional. Like right. I'm really showing you the center of this flower, and I don't really care as much about where the edges lie. There's a way to do that. That's what we do in portraiture a lot. It's very common in portraiture to cut the top of the head off, which doesn't seem like that seems counterintuitive, but there's a reason we do it, because a lot of times we're just trying to get in on the eyes more than anything. And I think for a flower, it could be the same thing. Mm-hmm. In fact, a lot of times I think flower shots people try to put too much in the photo.
Yes.
When there can be so much beauty in just the petals kind of coming together. So
yeah. Again, going back to, I think something we repeat often is simplify.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. Thank you, Pam. We have two from Roger trying to figure out what mat works best. Roger's got a great story for Pen members on the option 1 image board. Basically, I think he's got some shots of this bird before, but then in his garden, this bird was terrorizing some of the songbirds and just stuck around long enough for him to get his camera out, come outside, and then actually flew straight toward him for this shot.
Wow.
And Steve, I'm going to make you, I'm going to say you're our resident matte expert. You have a blue versus black matte preference?
I actually like the blue, which is kind of unusual for me. I tend to go more with black or white mattes. But I think the blue in this case just helps that sky to kind of extend into the
Yeah.
I think it's very pleasing. And the biggest thing is when you look at the black one, it looks like you're looking at a snapshot of a bird flying at you through a window or what have you. With the blue one, you just kind of feel like you're more part of the scene, I guess. It doesn't box in so much. So I think the blue one looks better, Roger.
Oh, cool. Very cool.
I agree.
Yep. All right. And then second part of this, I mean, the sharpness we have here on this bird coming straight at you is just awesome. This gentleman, you might not be able to see quite as well. I feel like it might be a little bit over sharp though. And I don't know if that is something you applied in post or if it just happens to be this quick fall off that's kind of creating that emphasis. But I just noticed some of these feathers back here just feel a little overcooked to me in the way of sharpness.
Now, it's hard for me to tell on my screen. I know I say that a lot, but I am watching kind of a feed of this. There just looks to be a lot of, I don't know what the word is I'm looking for, but on the edges of the wings and the ends, there's a lot of separation there, and it's really bugging me because every time I look at it, I can't seem to look away from that.
Yeah. What can we do about that? That's another issue that I think holds this back a little bit. I mean, yes, the bird is coming at us. Yes, the eyes are amazing in focus, but the way those wings are, either from motion or out of focus or a combination, is distracting.
Yeah, I was just looking at it thinking it's obviously not a depth of field thing because the tail seems to be pretty much in focus, more so than the wings. So this is definitely a motion thing, which, obviously when you're photographing a bird in flight, a lot of times you're lucky if you even get it in focus at all. And then to get the whole thing in focus and having the shutter speed high enough to where you really freeze the moment, it's really difficult. It's almost like if you're going to have the blur on the wings, then you've got to accentuate that in a way that looks very intentional, that looks like this is what I wanted. And I don't really know how you would go about doing that. It's such a cool moment to capture that it's definitely not like a throwaway shot. It's just, what are you going to do with those wings? And I don't really have an answer.
There could have been a little bit too much sharpening or definition applied to the photograph that created that pixel spread. What happens is when you sharpen, we did a tutorial on this a couple of years ago. When you sharpen, all it does is it takes the pixels and it just creates more pixels around those dark, those edges. So you see the edges more. And it's a fine line because it's very easy to take that 1 pixel density and turn it into 3.
Yeah.
Sharpens it up, but all of a sudden you've got the separation that looks totally artificial. So I don't have a problem with the motion at all. I have a problem with the artificial kind of ring around the wings. So I think what you did there seems to clean some things up quite a bit. I think there's just a little too much sharpening or definition applied, at least in that area. You can back it off.
Yeah. That's a good point, though, Steve. I think it's less about the motion and more about just like it kind of looked artificial. It looked, Yeah,
and Just Kyle has a great point. He says if you pull the highlights down all the way, you start to get that halo effect around edges. And he's absolutely right. I didn't think about that, but thank you, Kyle, for that suggestion too. That could have been it too. Is that the highlights were just pulled too far down and. So I think it's probably, Roger, a pretty easy fix if you're watching this. Just something to think about and be aware of.
Yeah, nice. Thank you, Roger.
Cool.
All right, Kevin Walk's got a shot in from the beach, and he was sharing some pictures with me as he was editing this, and he's warmed it up a good bit from its original shot, and I think that was the right direction to go, Kevin. But the first question I have is it straight? Well,
it looks pretty straight.
It looks pretty straight, yeah. We got a nice balance here. I love, we got setting sun over here, top left third, and then, interest object comes in on the kind of right-hand third. with this water wrapping around. I think
Yeah.
it's well composed there, Kevin, and or cropped to a degree.
Yeah.
I'm not sure,
Exposed.
I would take Kroby if you can do Kroby. If you can get your crop tool, cropping Toby, and freeform, come in from the left so that don't cut the sun out, but definitely cut that bright spot of the sky out. And then you've got the whitewash is kind of creating your leading line now.
Right this corner.
From the right, I would actually maybe leave it there, but that white foam area is a little distracting. So come right there and now come down in the sky until you're at a darker area. And there's just, there we go. I think it's just going to provide more drama. It doesn't show as much beautiful sky, but you really start to feel the wind.
It's like you don't need, you don't need as much beautiful sky. And
that doesn't change much. There's enough of the sky story in that sliver there.
You still get you get all the impact, and it's just composed. It's more refined to me. I like that a lot. I was feeling like there was too much of the water on the left because it's such a cool shot. I mean, there's this great texture and all this like stuff happening with the water over the rocks, but you kind of get lost in that left side when it was the full crop.
I dropped texture and clarity just a little bit on the water to smooth it right there, but otherwise I think it's nice.
I like the tones, and you said he pulled it up. That was a great call. I didn't see it before, but it's a nice shade.
Very nice. Thanks,
That's
Kevin.
A beautiful shot.
Another Kevin, snowy scene that I'm pretty sure he's turned black and white.
Looks like.
Yeah. This is cool. What do we think? This tree is coming right down to the edge.
That
come in. Past that story, or is it enough of a framing convention and item?
Well,
the background. So you have this awesome tree that's slightly cut off, but then above the snow line, it just morphs into a cluster of trees. I would cut that out altogether, including that little stump of a tree there.
All the way here?
Yeah. Unfortunately, I hate to say that because there's some really cool stuff, but I like simplicity.
Yeah, I think we have this nice anchor tree down here, and then we can kind of meander up through this snowy scene and these kind of rock outcrops. Yeah, I think that's pretty nice. I'm not sure what else I would suggest, though. I'm curious a tiny bit brighter. Because I noticed down here, and again, it might be tough for you guys, it's just the snow was just a little gray.
Okay.
And I want it to really be pure white or very close to it.
Yeah, Kevin, if you're watching this, that's something that Jeff Dachowski talked about, not in the most recent image review, but the one before that. And he talked about snow is white. It should be white. It shouldn't be blue. You'll get some, Kristen had a great photograph in the last image review where there were these blue tones, cool tones to it, but there was layers of pure white in there. When you're doing snow, it's really tricky. You want to make it as white as possible, but you don't want to blow it out. So I like what you did there.
Yeah, I like it. I think other than just cleaning up a few things along the edges, the left side, there are a couple little black spots, just always go around the edge of your frame and just make sure that there's nothing that's too out of place or just a distraction that pulls your eye away from, in a shot like this, it's not so much that there's one center focus kind of thing. I mean, there is a rock here, but there's a lot of other stuff that's going to take your attention away from the rock, and that's okay. This is just it's a scene. It's less about one subject. It's a scene. And so you just really want to make sure you clean it up to where there's nothing too distracting. I like it.
Yeah, pretty cool. Thanks, Kevin. And Ian has submitted. Ian, I think this is the first time you've submitted an image to the show, so thank you so much for doing that. It's great to see names that we don't see often. And Ian, actually, I don't know technically your title, but he lives in England and he is like a train track repairman. That's very the very basics of what I know he does. But so it's just kind of cool to see an image that is probably very commonplace to him, but it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So there's some neat aspects to this image. We've got, of course, a train. We've got the sign, "Beware of trains." There's some fun there. And then, of course, we've got this cool little bird sitting on top of the sign.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing, and you might be thinking about this, Ian, from some of the other shots, the first thing that strikes me is the train and the sign are pretty important subjects, and I would love to have them have a little bit more room on the left and the right.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just give them a little bit more space in the frame. What else would you say, gentlemen, or anything else? I'm going to brighten it a little bit too while I'm talking.
Yeah, I think brightening it. I mean, it's exposed, I think, well, and the color looks accurate to me. There's not a whole lot I'm seeing that, you know, editing wise that really needs to be done. Brightening it like you did, I think helps. You know, in certain photos, it's not so much about what are we going to take out and what are we going to leave. It's really just about fine tuning what's there. Mm-hmm. And I feel like, you know, the bird is sharp. The "Beware of Train" sign is sharp. The fact that the train is not sharp, I could go either way with that. If you were shooting it again and got one with it sharp, it might be cool to see the two. But I'm a sucker for bokeh and depth of field, shallow depth of field. So yeah, I mean, I agree. If it was a little wider and you had more room, and maybe perhaps this is a cropped version, I don't know. But if there is a little more room, always give yourselves a little more room to play with. Even if you do end up cropping in, at least you've got it there. You don't want things to be creeping too close to the edges of the frame.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I totally agree. I think absolutely you want more space. So Ian, if you're watching this, if you have the ability to go back to the original file and not crop in so tight, that's great. If you don't have that space, it gets a little bit more complicated on creating space in Photoshop. We've kind of covered that before. What I would do with this photo is there's a couple of things. The lights of the train are not symmetrical.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of fine, I guess, but it's really kind of bothering me. You've got two bokeh lights back there, and then one has sort of a second light. So I would near them somehow, like maybe what Toby's doing there. And then I would actually go black and white with this, because for me, it's just really distracting me. You have these green tones and you've got these yellow tones, and I'm missing the bird altogether. And now all of a sudden I think in black and white, you're going to kind of see the bird a little more against that lighter background.
That's not a bad call.
And then Pam Case had asked if the sign was straight. And I look for that stuff all the time, but the sign not being straight doesn't bother me at all. What I look for are the poles, the pole that the sign is mounted to, because signs will be crooked, but the pole will be straight. And then whatever's in the background there looks like that's straight. It just needs more space. And then I would probably go into Photoshop as a black and white, and then I would go in and I'd really tone down some of those brighter areas at the top. So the real focus is the sign, and then the train back there. Those are the bright areas of the photo. And then as an Easter egg, you get this little bird on top.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all nice. And Ian's in chat. He said that actually the bird was building a nest in there. So I'd love to see some follow-up pictures that kind of have really are focused in on that, Ian. You know, that's cool in this, you know, busy, hectic world, trains rushing by, little birds making its nest.
Curiosity, Toby, what's his aperture on this picture?
6.3.
Okay, so he was probably standing, well, and what's the focal length? 160
millimeters. So yeah, getting
longer lens.
Yeah.
Going to give you a lot of back there.
Yeah.
You know, you could kick that up to 8. I think you get a little bit more detail out of the train back there. Maybe not quite as much of that, the glow of the two lights being so different in size.
Yeah. I do like the black and white. I think that was a great suggestion.
I definitely do. You know, what I said earlier about the color being spot on, I felt like the color balance was kind of okay, but I just mentioned a second ago when I was talking about taking photos of my wife in the backyard, the green cast. Green is a really tricky color. The leaves of green trees in photos. A lot of times I just don't like it. A lot of times I can't get it to look right, even though it's the way it looked in nature. For some reason, it a lot of times doesn't look right to me in a photo. And so sometimes going black and white is like the saving grace of greens that are just a little unwieldy. And so it looks nice.
Yeah, with greens, you do. I mean, to your point, that's an awesome point. You have to be really careful. You don't want to use complementary colors too much. In this case, we had green and yellow. Those are very complementary. You go with something that's more red or just black tones, like in the case of portraiture or something. You got all this green. You got somebody with white or black tones. That's pretty neutral. Red looks really cool up against some green, but you go yellow and it starts to get really, really tricky, especially if you mix in some skin tones and stuff. And
yeah, absolutely.
With that, like green sort of tint to it.
Yeah. All right. If we remember, Becky last week had an image that was called like mountains and horses, and we couldn't find any horses. So she's corrected that this week and sent us a picture clearly that we can see our horses in. So I appreciate that, Becky. No searching for clues in this. This is neat. This is cool. But I worry that the horses aren't quite as sharp as I want them to be, but I can't find what is sharp. Let's see. You're at 250th of a second, which should be sharp enough for most movement. But we get in on them and they just have a little bit of motion blur to them. It doesn't ruin the shot, but it definitely does take it down a notch, in my opinion, with just a little bit. I got this view. It's really not bad. Yeah. But it's cool. I mean, obviously these two horses are playing or fighting, and then that other horse is totally like, whatever, dudes. I'm just chilling.
That's the middle child. I was a middle child. That one's like, I'm not a part of this. I'm wondering what this would look like in black and white, actually.
There you go. Yeah, totally.
I feel like this is one where, okay, if you have a photo where things aren't completely sharp, then make something like make art out of it. Like, and when I say that, all of these are art, but there's some photos that are, you're trying to get the most realistic representation of what you saw. And then others, you kind of want to like get a little funky with the editing and kind of bring up the texture and clarity and things. I don't know, just play with it to where it has this impact. That's like the moment is an impact, but yeah, it's stuff like, I don't know. Sometimes with a photo like that, that's the thing I'll do to it too, because I'm like, if I try to just show it as it actually looked, it's a cool moment, but it may not be something necessarily I'm going to hang on the wall. But then when you do something more artistic with it, you know, that guy, David is it Yarrow? Yeah. Like a lot of his wildlife photos are like that to me. It's there's a lion, there's an elephant, but there's this drama to it that he brings in with that black and white. And I think that's sometimes what a photo needs, you know?
Yeah, I think that's a great suggestion. So I was just kind of listening as you were doing that. I went black and white. I went to, let's go back to just a single shot of it. I went and got the clarity brush, as well as making some basic adjustments, and just brushed a bit more clarity on these as well. This might be, I'm not prepared for it, but this might be another image that'd be cool to put into the topaz sharpener and see if it can take a little bit of that off. So,
and I'll just say, I could talk myself out of everything I just said. That's how my process is. I got to go down that road and then go, you know, actually that's not what I want to do. But you know, sometimes I get a vision in my head of what I want to do to my photos, and then I go for it. It doesn't look right, so I try something else. But experiment with it. Don't be afraid to go black and white and just try something completely different than what you were doing. The thing I do like is that you have 3 horses, and that to me is a plus.
Yeah.
Versus 2.
I like the black and white. It's a whole different processing technique that I use with black and white than color. I'm sure you guys can agree. And I would maybe crop down, get rid of some of that sky, you know, just kind of really fill the frame with the action that's going on, because there's nothing really too interesting happening outside of that exact.
True.
Just be very, very intentional. And then I would probably go in with a burn tool and really darken all the background stuff. Because with that dark horse, he will stand out. The the definition around its muscles and stuff like that, the lighter areas will stand out. But I think if you go through and really darken down that background, it'll help everything to pop just a little bit more. I like the black and white. There were just too many colors and too many sparse areas of the photograph.
Yeah.
Were distracting, and I really just wanted to concentrate on, this is a hilarious scene to me personally. You got these throwing a fit, and then this other one stand off to the side like whatever.
I love it. I mean, this is like something you'd see in Life magazine from like 1935 or something. It's like it's got this vintage look to it because it is timeless. Because there's nothing that's saying when this was taken, and so it's an interesting moment. And I say this a lot to people. It's like sometimes you're capturing a color thing that's happening. Sometimes you're capturing a light thing, but a lot of times you're capturing a moment, like a gestural thing. This is something that happened and then was done. And so that's the story more than anything else. And so it's just really making sure that nothing detracts from the actual story, which is this moment in time when these horses were being silly. And this other one was like, y'all are crazy. So
Toby, how do you toggle on the, where you show the mask?
Letter O.
Gotcha.
And Shift O will rotate you through some other colors if you're not finding a color you like. I like the green or the red often because it's so like, this is definitely what you painted on. The darker ones, sometimes they can just be distracting with like, you're not sure if you just made a change to a setting as opposed to having that on.
It's weird in Photoshop, Camera Raw. I'm sure you can change this. I just never have. I use the default. It's the exact opposite. Like where you're painting, it's coloring. Or no, where you're painting is taking away from. Like it's almost like the whole photograph is red, and then you're taking away.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah,
I haven't tried that on that side.
For a lot of that stuff, I've used Lightroom over the years, and then all of a sudden, I've been switching over to using a lot more Photoshop, and it's the opposite. It's the same company. Why would you do that?
Yeah, and I do, not that I expect you to watch this, Steve, but those of you watching, I do cover a lot of this local area adjustment tips and tricks in the second workshop I did a week ago a week ago. So go take a look at that. All right. Thank you, Becky. And thank you to everybody who submitted. These were some great images. I really appreciated you putting them out there and letting us pick at them a little bit. So thanks for all of that. And psychedelic, remove from screen. Okay.
Pretty bummed. Okay.
Let's talk a little gear news. The Canon EOS R5. I can't remember if David, you were on, I can't remember who was on the show when we first talked about it. Canon kind of teased it and said, here is basically our flagship mirrorless that's coming soon with very little substantial details, but did happen to mention, oh yeah, it's going to shoot 8K.
Yeah.
And almost all of us being talking heads on YouTube were like, probably time lapse. Like that's what Nikon. Remember Nikon said that this camera's going to shoot 8K. Yeah, it makes 8K time lapse footage.
Yeah.
Which I mean, it's certainly a marketing stretch. It's kind of like a camera being a politician, putting out numbers that's like, yeah, this is true, but don't don't look at the fine details. And then additional content started coming out with this recent announcement that first Canon was like, no, it is not time lapse. It's going to actually shoot 8K. And then I'm going to Tech Radar's got a good update about this. They did a little live stream the other day, and basically it's going to be able to shoot 8K internal with 10-bit log, which is a very high data-packed resolution and detail video. That there's just nothing that comes close to this right now. This is incredible. Crazy specs.
Yeah, that's incredible.
I mean, you have the Panasonic S1H, which is I reviewed that camera, last year sometime, about a year ago, I think. It's got an internal fan so that it can do 6K, and it doesn't even do it internally. It has to put it out to an external recorder.
Atomos or something.
Yeah, exactly. And this is going to do it internally at a higher bit rate. And it looks like a normal camera. Where's the fan? How is Canon going to do this?
I don't know, man.
Is it? Does it say anything? I haven't actually followed this. I've been seeing the headlines, and I've been meaning to sit down and check this out before the show tonight. Unfortunately, I didn't do that. But is it talked about being a crop factor?
No, it's a good full resolution. Full resolution. Good question. Let me share my screen again and pop over to this article so we can see that.
Brooks did a video on that, and I thought it was a little bit of clickbait.
Yeah, no. So, I mean, here it is. It looks like, it looks like a kind of a slightly nicer, beefier version of the Canon EOS R, which came out, a year and a half ago or so. It's going to do 8K at 30 frames per second, 4K at 120 frames per second. No other consumer camera or commercial camera does that either. They haven't said megapixels yet, but based on the fact that it's going to shoot 8K, it's got to be about 45 megapixels.
Yeah.
Right. So they've done that, and there's no pricing yet, and there's no availability, as this headline says. Although Canon Rumors is pretty confident that end of May, so about a month from now, or maybe early June, is when it will be officially unveiled and people start to have hands on.
Wow.
So
pretty incredible.
The price. I mean, this is a kind of a mirrorless version of their 5D Mark series, which typically is, what about 3,500 usually?
Yes. When it's introduced, 3,600 bucks. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
what's speculation on the price?
Speculation on the price. I mean, there isn't much right now, but I just find it really hard to believe that they're going to hit that $3,500 mark with a camera that blows away everything that's out there.
Yeah, I mean, I even saw a speculation of basically $5,000. There aren't a whole lot of cameras that land at $5,000. You've got 3,500, 3,600, and then you go up to $6,000 and $7,000 for like the pro, the D5 Nikon and the 1DX and all that Canon. But there's nothing that really hits in that $5,000 range in this type of camera. So I don't know. Maybe it will be less. That seems like it would be a stretch for a lot of consumers and even professionals. But
right. The 5D Mark series is portrait photographer, those who shoot Canon, portrait photographer, wedding photographer, event. I mean, it is just kind of the bread and butter camera for everybody except for maybe serious sports photographers that go up to the 1DX. And 3,500, I think, is, while not cheap, if this is a tool to your business, then yeah, you get up to $5,000, almost double the price. Well, I just made 3,500 double $5,000. That's a little poor math there, but it's a significant increase in price.
That would be a significant. Yeah, I can't see it being that. I can see it being more than a 5D Mark IV. When it was introduced. Maybe there's a new price category coming our way, because that camera, I mean, that sounds unbelievable. I mean, just the specs on that. And all I got to say is, Nikon, you better step it up.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. And, John in chat says Canon has a reputation of, now what's the trade-off, waiting for the other shoe to drop. One of my thoughts, and that's true, I agree, John. One of my thoughts back a while was, okay, well, they're not going to allow dual pixel AF at these very high resolutions, because they've done that in previous cameras. But nope, they've come out and said they'll have that too. So there will be some kind of trade-off, I think, but what will it be is the question.
I think that the pricing is going to be a really, really telltale sign of how they're going to do with this camera, at least initially.
Yeah, I agree.
Because if you get into that $5,000 range, now you've got the serious photographer who doesn't really care too much about video.
Yeah,
go buy medium format now at $5,000 with food.
Great.
And then the video person typically doesn't, especially the vlogger, they don't want to go out and spend $5,000 on a larger camera and stuff. They're more, deal with the crop sensor and stuff like that. Get something that takes really good. And 8K, so I don't know. I'm not a video guy. I'm a still shooter. Now, if 8K allows you to take high resolution video and pull still frames for that, maybe the wedding photographer will go for it. I don't know if you're going to spend over $4,000 for that equipment out the gates and really get bang for the buck. Somebody commented, Eli said, I think it's going to be revolutionary like the 5D Mark II. And that's a great comment, because I've been hoping that Canon would come out with their next 5D Mark II for a long, long time. I think a lot of us Canon fans have wanted that. But I think if you get into the $5,000 range, you're not going to get many buyers, especially with what's happened in the last few weeks with the economy. And
that's a good point.
True. Yeah.
Just, if they come out and this thing is $39.99, I think that would be a great move if they can afford to do it at that. Because nobody really even has 8K. You're talking about huge memory, huge bulk ups to your desktop system and everything else to edit all that stuff. Like,
and it's like the people that shoot 8K are, well, I mean, typically, like if you're really thinking 8K, you're probably already getting into some serious video equipment at that point. Like real, like actual video cameras. Not that this isn't, but like, you know what I mean? Like there's
the Reds and the Sony FX7 series.
Like if you're like, I have to shoot 8K, you're probably already in that realm. So I'm wondering who this is gonna, like, it's exciting, but it's kind of like if they came out with, if this was 100 megapixels, it's like, oh, that's cool, except for what in the world are we going to do with 100 megapixels? The average, well, really just about any photographer, it's, I mean, I don't know. It's an interesting thing. I mean, Canon, at least they're creating something with some wow factor, because, I feel like all the companies, they'll every few years they come out with something that does have the wow factor. And then it's kind of like this lackluster sort of, it's like concept cars. Like you see a concept car and you're like, oh, that's going to be amazing. And then you see the actual production version. And it's like, oh, it's kind of lame, or it's not nearly what they were touting it to be. So it looks like they're at least trying to go for it. So
Canon's kind of been the king of that over the last few years. It's you don't see a concept car, but you see people start to speculate what they're going to come out with, and they come out with something. You're like, yeah, okay, fine. I do want to pull up LT Deadeye's comment here. Says it's not about the 8K, it's about the 120.
No, I said that. Nobody else is doing anything close to that.
Yeah,
either.
that's a good point.
Yeah. And he says 20. Oh, sorry, Steve, go ahead.
Yeah, no, that is awesome. And if you don't have this big crop factor and everything else, like that's killer. That's usable.
Yeah.
8K is a good spec. But if you're going to roll that out and then you're going to price it because of that, people aren't going to buy it. They don't need it yet.
Yeah.
But 4K at 120 and it's priced at $4,000 or less, I think they'll have a killer product on their hands.
Yeah. Also, he mentions, or they mentioned, 20 frames per second stills doesn't hurt either. That is, though, electronic shutter, which it's unlikely that it's going to be fast enough to avoid rolling shutter issues. So 12 frames per second mechanical shutter, that's very good. That's basically where all cameras are today, and except for things like, the very high-end cameras that are a good bit more. So on a lot of levels, this camera seems really, really great. As John mentioned, kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop. But every time somebody comes up with this or that, Canon comes back and says, no, this is the actual spec. No, it can do this. It can do that. And if they keep that train rolling, it's going to be impressive. But I'm really curious about price as we've been talking.
You know what I'm wondering, being a Nikon guy, I mean, there's a lot of talk about, a Z8, a Z9, something like that. I would imagine by the end of the year, they're going to announce something. They have to, if they want to stay alive. But I'm wondering if Nikon is going to go a different direction and create a vertical grip, like with the vertical grip built in, like a D5, like the pro sports kind of camera. Create a mirrorless camera that has that going for it. That, because there are a lot of people clamoring for that more than 8K. A lot of photographers, sports photographers, wildlife photographers, they want a mirrorless that really gives them that professional feel and ruggedness and vertical grip and battery life that's insane that you get on those big chunky cameras. Maybe that'll be Nikon's, like, that'll be the direction they go. I don't know. It's gonna be interesting. Because to me personally, that would interest me more than 8K. So
I'm pretty much in your boat, Carr. I'm not a video guy. I don't see myself being a video guy anytime in the near future. It's just I don't have a big passion for that. I have a huge amount of respect for people that are. but it's just not my thing. Like the 5DS series of Canon, that was my thing. The S and the SR, super high end stills, doesn't need to be fast, but just big sensor, a lot of light, good dynamic range, and stuff like that. So and I think that's why I get a little passionate talking about this, because if they come out with an 8K camera and then they price it at $5,000 or up, that I have no interest in it whatsoever. Yeah. Now, if they come out with that and it's priced at $4,000, it's a super sharp still camera that also has great video capabilities, then you still have my interest.
Yeah. Let's wrap this up because we got other big things to discuss. But I'd just say that I see other people in chat kind of agreeing with you, Steve. Not so much care on the video side of things. So if the video happens to price this out of people's reach, that's going to be a bummer.
Yeah.
John says, watch battery life be 30 seconds at 8K. You're joking, but maybe that might be their key in the record time. They haven't announced that yet. Maybe they only allow 8K to run for 5 minutes or 10 minutes. There are some cameras that do that.
Yeah.
Which we laugh and joke, but almost all of the clips I shoot when we're out doing stuff are 30 seconds to a minute clip, unless I'm interviewing or recording my kid on stage or something, then, longer is needed. But if it could do, a shortened amount of time, but at 8K, that could be useful to some people. So, yeah. Okay. I think I'll just mention drone wise. Well, this is fun because we've got this cool picture here. So, you guys, let's see. Let's go back to the top of this. We have, and also, Steve, I know you've been consistently looking for a drone and waiting. Is this the drone you've been waiting for?
I've been talking about this for years probably now, and I never pulled the trigger.
So on April 27th, 5 days from now at 9:30 p.m. Pacific time, it's kind of a weird, but it's in the morning in China. So the announcement's probably coming from China since DJI is a Chinese company. They are going to be announcing a new product. Almost everybody believes it to be the Mavic Air 2. Leaked photos make it look identical to, or except smaller, to the Mavic Pro 2 or Mavic 2 Pro. And they tweeted out this kind of cool picture and said, curious about our upcoming announcement. We've hidden some clues as to what will be revealed. Find them all and the new product will be yours. So if you're kind of one of these people that like these, go to the DJI Global's Twitter. I can see the body of the drone here. I see propellers here, a battery sitting here. I found a little 48 right here. I know that there's a rumor that it's going to be 48 megapixels stitched images. So that's not going to be a single image. No word on whether it's going to shoot RAW. I have to think it will. And I do believe it's going to shoot 4K to differentiate itself from the little Mavic Air or Mavic Mini. So this is cool though. It's fun. Pick this apart, see what you find in it. I see a battery charger that reminds me a lot of the Mavic Mini.
Now, for the people in the chat room and those that are watching the re-recording of this, I've seen Toby play Pokemon Live or whatever it's called, and dude, you're money at it. So you got to look up on everybody. I think
you're trusting me. Oh, all right. I didn't know where you were going to go with that, but okay, I'll take it.
I'm still looking for Waldo. I can't find him.
Have you seen the memes of like the hiding as where is Waldo in this time of pandemic is very hard. There's like a picture of they like digitally Photoshop all of the people out except for Waldo, and they're like,
that's funny.
That's pretty funny. Yeah. So there's that, and also the Autel Evo 2, which does shoot 8K as well. It's not as impressive because it's a much smaller sensor, is starting to finally ship. This was announced forever ago, and its price is pretty fantastic. This is the bundle, which gets you this hard case, spare batteries, charger, all of this stuff. It's got obstacle avoidance. I was quite impressed when I reviewed the original Autel, I think about a year ago now too. Yeah, everything was a year ago. I'll just keep sticking to that timeline. But this looks pretty impressive, especially if you kind of feel like DJI has a little bit of a monopoly and you want to support the underdog. They are an underdog that seems to be doing or offering great value.
And they have the video screen built into the controller, right?
Yes.
And I do like that.
loved. You know,
I don't love having to connect my phone to use my Mavic
Yeah.
Air.
That's a great, I'm so glad you brought that up, David, because there is a possibility. The new Mavic Air will likely have the OcuSync technology, which means rock solid connection from your remote to the drone.
Okay.
And there is some question about whether it'll use the smart controller. So DJI does offer a separate controller you can buy.
Okay.
But it is $650 or somewhere.
Okay.
It's expensive.
Yeah, that's about what I paid for my drone. So.
Yeah. It's on loan to me right now. I've been using it. I used it on that road trip way back in February before things went crazy. And Chris was so funny. I was like, "Hey, look at this thing," and she's like, "Oh, you've been using it on this trip." She's like, and I said, "It's $600 though." And she's like, "Well, I haven't heard you cuss at all, so I think it's worth it." Because every time I'm not around clients and stuff, and I'm having to shove my phone into the Mavic controller, I'm usually cussing because it's time and energy spent jamming it in there.
Yeah, well, I have to take the case off my phone a lot of time. It's a clunky way to do it. I get it, but it's just yeah.
So with that smart control, I hope to do a separate review of it at some point. You're trading the kind of portability and also the savings for the super convenience. You turn it on, it's a big, bright, beautiful screen ready to go with your drone.
Cool.
See, that appeals to me, but I'd like to see them sort of rope that into, they do the Fly More packs.
Yeah.
And that includes the controller in there and maybe discounted by $100 or something like that. They probably sell more of them.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about life-changing gear, and then we'll kind of wrap up the show with a Lego set, because I know everybody's dying to know what Lego set I want, and answer a couple of questions. So, gentlemen, would one of you like to lead off, or you want me to?
I'll lead off.
All right,
because I was thinking about this a lot today. Like, what like life-changing gear that I've owned? I mean, other than the D600 Nikon, the first full-frame DSLR that I bought, that was when this was 7.5 years ago or so. I just was like, I want to get into this. I want to learn how to use a camera. I bought that when it was like the new thing. It was like the first prosumer full-frame DSLR that Nikon had introduced, and it had some issues. It had a lot of it had oil that sprayed on the sensor, which is not good. So they had to recall it, and they had to release the D610. But that was life-changing because it got me into photography. But I'm going to tell you right now, it wasn't necessarily gear, but it was Lightroom that changed it for me. Because when I got a camera and I thought, oh, now I can take awesome pictures because I have a good camera. And I'm like taking them going, well, they're good, but they're not like that much better than the other cameras I've used in the past. And it wasn't until I really started diving into editing and the power of, shooting raw and working with raw photos that I was like, holy cow, this is how you do it. Because I used to wonder, like, how do these photographers get these incredible shots? And I'm not saying it wasn't skill, and I'm not saying it wasn't shooting it well. All of that trumps everything else. But the editing and the ability to take that photo, and you'll see that in my latest editing video on YouTube, the ability to take that photo that maybe doesn't look like it's all there and create something beautiful out of it. It just blew my mind when I saw what I could do. And so Lightroom was the biggest game changer for me.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. Yeah, no, I totally agree. I love, and Steve, you often say you got to bring home good ingredients. You got to come back from your photo trips with a good start picture, but then it really is in Lightroom that you are taking it to that level that just has that pop and wow factor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, and then going into Photoshop took it even to the next level. But just editing in general with pro software, game changer.
Nice. Good. I really like that. Steve, how about you?
Lightroom. No, I'm just kidding.
Copycat.
That was a great one though. I didn't really think about that. And you almost anyway. So I had three things that were huge influencers, but one that really kind of was life-changing, and that was the chicken wire and roach clip photo display that is in my house that I found on Etsy. Changed my life completely.
Oh man, those are amazing.
You got to be a long-time watcher to appreciate that joke. Yeah.
All right. So when I was in high school, I shot with a camera called the Minolta Maxim 7009. It was a really high-end camera at the time. My father actually had it, And it was the first camera where you half press the shutter button to grab focus.
Mm.
And that was pretty life-changing at the time, because you're not doing the manual stuff. You're not lining up the meter and all that stuff. It was a battery hog, but that really got me into photography.
I'm sorry, Steve, what was the model of the Minolta?
Minolta 7000, Maxim 7000i was my first good film camera, but it was my father's. I was just borrowing it, and I used that for the school newspaper and stuff like that. When I got into digital years later, I think it was a Canon Rebel T3i that really I started to take better pictures. Yeah, that's it, man.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I like the look of that.
Nothing today, because they're plastic and they ate up batteries and stuff. We didn't have like good rechargeable batteries back then, so you're constantly feeding it. It was either double or triple A's. They all went in the hand grip there, and but that was a pretty amazing camera at the time.
Was it 8K or 4K? I can't remember which one that one was.
It was 7K. It's a 7000.
7K, yeah.
It was 720. So my T3i was great because it got me back into digital photography, and that's where I, learned how to software edit and stuff like that. But anyway, the life changer for me was my Hasselblad X1D that I have. And you guys hear me kind of reference this a lot. I talk about it a lot. And I am so fond of this camera. For those of you that don't know, and I'll be brief, Toby was testing this camera on a Southwest trip a couple of years ago, and I asked to shoot it because I've always wanted to shoot it. I love medium format, and I figured as a digital photographer, I'm never going to be able to afford to shoot medium format. And I always loved medium format when I was shooting film too, but I just couldn't afford it. And so I took the camera and I tested it out, and I couldn't stand it. And the second day I decided to give it another shot, and I started to learn some of its quirks and features and stuff, and I liked it more. And by the third day, I absolutely fell in love with the way it slowed me down, the way it made me be even more intentional about what I was shooting. And I got home, and a couple of weeks later, I literally couldn't get it out of my head. I was talking to my wife about showing her the files and talking about what a joy it was to shoot this camera. And so we went out, and I bought this, and it's got a lot of emotional value, I suppose, because it was on our 10th anniversary, and it's a special edition model. And it just, for me, it was like, I grew up a skateboarder, and everything was about, you either were a skater or you were a poser. I hate to say that, it sounds so shallow, but when you're kids living in Santa Cruz, that's kind of what it is. And fortunately, I was pretty good at skateboarding, and everybody came to my house, and so we hated the posers, right? And so what you didn't want to do is you didn't want to have equipment that was really nice if you were just a poser. You look like a total schmuck. And so some of that mentality has probably been ingrained since I was a child, and I never felt like I could justify spending the money and stepping into something like this unless I actually knew what I was doing. And I felt like I had reached a point in my career where I could justify buying this piece of equipment. I crunched the numbers on the return on investment and all that other stuff. And I'll tell you, since I was in a real funk about the time that I got it, and I love picking up this camera every single time I get a chance to shoot it. I just get so excited. It's almost like I've had it in my hand since it's the first day again. And I don't know, it's the first piece of equipment that I've had a lot of emotional tie to, and it was life-changing. It's cool. It inspired me at a time when I felt like I was just really needing a kick in the butt to say, like, get serious about this. This is going to be your life's legacy, and go own it.
It's cool.
Very cool. Very cool. I mean, I think what I'm hearing from both of you is that, we've had these journeys through gear and equipment, and depending on, it may be more about where we are in our lives than the gear itself necessarily. It might be like kind of chicken or the egg almost in some cases. But that, when we have been ripe for the moment this piece of gear was in our hands. I think my story is very similar. I mean, I was thinking about this, and just to give credit to DP Review, they're the ones that have been talking about this in the last week or two, that I was like, hey, that's a great topic. And so if you're interested in what Jordan or Chris have thoughts on this, you can go check their YouTube videos out. And for me, I mean, I had point and shoots when I was younger because I just like to document my travels. And then I wanted to get a little bit more serious, and I got a film SLR, one of the Rebels. You know, John McEnroe was like, you know, on the sticker or on the manual, he was advertising it with this big racket in the air. And then, you know, that just kind of, life got busy and things got, you know, other things started going on. And the kind of the inconvenience of film really slowed me down for a while. So I picked up a digital point and shoot when they became, you know, more popular and affordable, and kind of went through several models of those. And it was the Canon G5. Where do I have it open? Right here. The Canon PowerShot G5. Oops, there we go. Is probably the camera that I want to call out, because, and again, for me especially, this was a time in my life where I was teaching and working, and photography was something I really, really enjoyed to kind of get away from the stresses of life. And this camera shot RAW. And I remember picking it out as my next point and shoot because I had heard about the benefits of shooting RAW. And David, it's kind of funny, is I didn't do much editing, if at all. I was way behind the curve on that when I had this camera, but I was excited that it did shoot RAW.
Yeah,
I knew that there was some more potential there. I just didn't do much with it. But I also
I know what that's like.
Yeah. I also love that it had an articulating screen. I had an earlier Nikon that had a whole body that articulated. I'd find that really useful. And what I remember about this, and some of you have heard, you know, this part of the story, is I took this on a family vacation out here to the West Coast. I lived on the East Coast at the time, and went to Mount Rainier National Park with the family. And one morning got up really early all by myself and photographed this picture with it. And I remember it was kind of funny because there were a couple other photographers there. They had big, serious cameras. They probably were still film cameras in that day. They might have been digital. And I had my little point and shoot on a tripod, and, you know, I had a little remote for it. I was a little like shy about that, but then I was like, well, screw it, man. I'm here. I'm taking these pictures. I took that picture that I just really loved, and looking back on it, there's so many things that aren't great about it. And it's pretty noisy without even really being edited. And then this picture I shot a little bit later that morning, I've since turned into a black and white. And I entered both of those when I got back to the East Coast in my local fair, and they both, you know, placed. One got like second place in travel, and the other got like an honorable mention or something. But I had said to myself before submitting them that if they do well, that's a sign that I need to get a better camera. I was just basically, I was looking for a sign to get fancy new gear. And so
I'm always looking for that sign.
You want to be a poser, right?
I know. Yeah, exactly. I've got awards under my name now. I can graduate to the big boy cameras. And since they placed, then that's when I upgraded to the Rebel XT. And I was back. That felt really great to me because I was back to having interchangeable lenses as I had way back in the film days. And I kind of felt like I'd come full circle. And so there, I mean, you know, as I was thinking about this list, I thought I could also put the Canon 24-70 lens on this list. I just feel like that has just been such an awesome, solid workhorse lens. But it really hasn't been life-changing. And so I just keep coming back. That G5 was just at that period that just worked out for me. And so I liked it a lot.
That's cool.
Yeah, Toby, you put that up there. It's funny. My predecessor to the Rebel was a G9, Canon G9. So it would have been that series.
Yeah.
You know, a few years, probably 3 or 4 years after you had that G5.
Yeah.
And I just found it. I was working in the garage a couple of days ago, and it's sitting in a box. Still works fine too.
Nice.
That's cool.
I did have to sell my G5 to fund the XT purchase. Yeah. But it was a great little camera. I asked this question on the Facebook group, and just, you know, got some fun results as well. Quite a few Minoltas in there from people that were in the film days. I mean, Minolta just had a pretty solid lock on the industry, didn't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were. I mean, that was like one of the biggest names. I mean, I think there was a time when like I would have thought that they were bigger than Nikon or Canon. Well, maybe not Canon, but it was a time when like Pentax and Minolta were.
Olympus was big.
Olympus. I mean, they were just big names.
And Roy, his first was the Sony Mavica, which saved the pictures onto a floppy drive. I don't know if you guys remember that. We had one when I taught as well. And it's just so funny. And then the next version of this was one that saved it onto rewritable CDs. And you couldn't jiggle it too much after you took a picture because you would corrupt it. It's writing onto a CD.
Wow.
It's great.
Oh yeah. We, so the band I was in, I remember when we bought one of these Sony Mavicas and I was like, I can't believe this thing. I mean, 2 megapixels.
Yeah.
Or I think it was 2. And just awful. But at the time it was amazing. Like it was like just the fact that like a camera was taking pictures and putting them on a floppy disk was mind blowing.
Yeah.
And I do want to say this real quick, just in light of what we're talking about, like especially the whole poser thing. I mean, because I bought into the whole like gear is going to make you better thing. I bought into that for a long time, and I still sometimes buy into it. And I think one of the I had the Nikon D5 for a while, which I've talked about before, and I loved it. It was a fantastic camera. It was so fun to shoot with. But that was an example of me having a moment in my life when I could sort of justify spending. It was a lot of money, and I thought, like, this just shows my ignorance, and I'm just admitting this. I really thought that camera was like better than anything else that Nikon made because it was expensive and big and flashy. And it wasn't until like the D850 came out that I realized, wait, it's not that it's better overall. The D850 actually takes, I would say, better pictures overall. They're bigger, the dynamic range is better, all this stuff. I bought into the hype of, if I buy this expensive camera, I'm going to be a better photographer. And I love that camera. I loved it. But I sold it because I realized this is not really this is not what I need to do what I do. And I don't know. I just wanted to say that as like an admission of like, I've bought into that hype and that's not really what it's about.
Yeah. I, like Toby mentioned, winning a couple of awards, and that's what you need to go buy a better piece of equipment or something. I've kind of always subscribed to that a bit. I've always wanted the good stuff, but the whole like skater poser thing, like I didn't want to get it until A, I could afford it, if that ever, and B, I was actually worthy of owning a piece of equipment like that. And I mean, that's your own internal battle that you kind of have to work through.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. Exactly. It's like getting it and then realize I almost felt embarrassed using it around people who were better than me, because I was like, well, just because I show up with this like super nice camera, I don't even know how to use half the functions on it. And it's a little weird. Like you do show up feeling like a poser.
Yeah.
A couple more that I want to highlight. John Mayfield, the 40 millimeter macro lens was life-changing for him, affordable, and a really nice introduction to macro photography. I have that lens. I don't even have any Nikon bodies at the moment, and I have that lens. It's fantastic, and I think that's great. For Mary Madden, it was the Canon AE1 that she bought from a fellow student and took on pictures that she traveled abroad with.
Right here. Here we go.
Yeah. Steve's got a little collection back there.
Guys got it. So who was that shared that?
That was Mary Madden, who was just on our Southwest trip. Not the one you were on. So I don't know if you've been on a trip with Mary. I think that was her first trip. I think she'd only done classes with McKay's. Very nice.
There, but it's a trip down memory lane, and sitting right next to it was this bad boy. Oh, I love this thing.
Oh, nice.
Wow, look at that.
Yeah. And that is, you shoot that. Is that a hip shot? Is that flip up and that's cool.
I've got a viewfinder for it, but I mean, I like shooting it down at the belly.
Yeah. Yeah. Very cool. And then a couple Rebels are pretty strong in there as well. And that's, for me, as I said, I progressed on to the Rebels after the Canon power shots. Yeah, so this is cool. Continue. I know Roy's been collecting some. I'd love to just read through and see what else people have. But we're going to start to wrap up the show. We've got to hit, because it's so important, we've got to hit the Lego set that I need. And it's very affordable, not like most Lego sets. And it simply is... I do that. There it goes. Drone guy's got a drone stuck in a tree. That's a new Lego set. Now, technically, it is part of, Lego does these little minifigure series. You actually only get the guy and the drone. This is my friend, Alan Rappa. I've followed him forever. I think he asked for camera advice ages ago he does these toy photo shoots with Legos and stuff. This is one of his more popular ones on Flickr, or maybe his most popular picture. He just does cool stuff with lots of neat lightings, and they're like a lot of Star Wars stuff. And he posted this. Cool. It is you just get this dude right here. But then Alan added, of course, the tree to make it, a little bit more exciting, because that's actually Alan's personal story. And well, Alan, as many drone owners, I might have a similar story. Mine actually hit the tree and then fell down onto the rocks. So
I'm sitting here like, Toby, as soon as the show is over, you need to send me a link to that, because I personally am going to buy and gift that to you and send it to your house. Do it through Amazon, through one of your links, but if that doesn't exist, then you need that, because that was us in Croatia right there. Specifically you in Croatia.
Yeah, we need a few more minifigures. We need the really out of shape and chain smoking guy who kind of showed us how to get up there, and his dog. That's a fun story. Yeah, so I just thought that was pretty cool. And yeah. Okay. Let's hit a couple of questions. And then, as we did last week, we're just going to share things that we're into that may have nothing to do with photography at all, or something to do with photography, and wrap the show up. So a couple of questions that we got for us. Before I do that, let's just come back to the three of us right here. All right. Brooke. Oh, that's the gear. Lots of cool gear. Thank you for that. Eli, hey guys, I'm interested in waiting for the EOS R6. So I didn't even really mention this, but the R5 is kind of stealing all of the news and thunder, but Canon is going to release an R6 at some point here. It's going to be a mirrorless version that seems to be maybe kind of like their 6D Mark, 6D and 6D Mark II series, 20 megapixels. And they're thinking it might be a good upgrade from their Canon 200D, which is the SL2, I think.
Okay.
Great upgrade.
Yeah. So one, do you think it'll have better low light capabilities, because it's supposed to be a 20 megapixel sensor versus 45? Mm-hmm. Yes, but there is the chance that Canon could be really stingy and just stick one of the 6D sensors in there. Although they're 24, aren't they? So this should be a new sensor, and yes, smaller resolutions usually do better in low light.
Mm-hmm.
And then also wants to know, when will Sigma bring out third-party glass? I don't know. I think they are still waiting just to see how well the mirrorless line from Canon takes off. But
Sigma doesn't produce any lenses for the Canon mirrorless stuff.
No, there's no real third-party autofocusing RF glass that I know of off the top of my head right now.
Interesting. That's a bad move. I mean, hopefully they're working diligently on that, because like the RF line is not going anywhere. In fact, that's probably Canon's future.
Yeah.
I don't
absolutely.
Obviously, but I would think that Sigma would just be working like crazy on that to get those out.
I know. Well, I haven't seen much for Nikon either. I mean, there's some like really third-party stuff, like brands you haven't heard of, that are making lenses for the Z series. But the number of people, I'm astonished at the number of people I see on some of the forums that I'm in on Facebook and such, that of Nikon shooters that are selling their DSLRs to get a Z6, to get a Z7. I mean, it's just they're just dropping like flies. And so the market is there. I mean, people want the glass, And yeah, you'd think that I mean, it's not like mirrorless is a fad. It's not like oh, remember the days when we used to think mirrorless was going to be the big thing? I mean, because somebody the other day was like, "Oh, I don't know if I could really figure that out." I'm like, it's the same thing. It's just doesn't have a mirror, and it has an EVF, and it's like it's a step forward, you know. And so for some people, that's just
Well, especially if you're talking about a company that's already producing lenses for other mirrorless cameras, like the Sony.
well, exactly, yeah.
What? I mean, that would just be a no-brainer. You come out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, except for the fact that, you know, it is then different assembly lines and there is work that needs to be there. But I absolutely agree with both of you. This is the future. And I do think we'll see lenses from these. When I Google it, you know, there's rumors back in the end of last year that Sigma's going to release a roadmap for their RF lenses here soon.
Cool.
So, you know, the pandemic certainly doesn't help these companies get that kind of stuff out, but it should be soon. And I think that will really help sell too. I think it's one of the things that really helped Sony is there were pretty decent third-party options early on. And those options have just exploded. The new Tamron, was it 70 to 180? That's great. And it's so compact and nice and lightweight. So there's a lot of good options out there. And when we see them for these other companies as well, I think they'll do well. Andrew wants us to talk about, Eli wants us to talk about aspect ratios when exporting a picture for prints. Before I pick your brains about this, Eli, I'll just say that in the very first workshop, I do talk a good bit about cropping. But Steve, I like what you often say about this. Do you want to do your little spiel?
I'm not sure if I completely follow, but what I usually tell people is, if I'm sharing online, I just do freeform crop. It doesn't matter because, you know, the programs pick it up. Instagram's a little different with the square 8x10 kind of thing. But when I go to print, absolutely, that is critical. I use Bay Photos Rose system, gives me all the different options of what they have available. Certain formats have different crop factors available. And I try to find something that is going to fit my client's needs. And then I produce the photo to fit that crop factor. So I hope that's kind of what you're talking about and what the question is. So I don't give any thought to it if I'm sharing online. Print though, and it looks like that's what the question is.
Yeah.
Absolutely, I produce the photo for that crop factor or a version of the photo for that crop factor, create a final image, export that, order it off, send it off to my client, and then that gets saved in a folder for them. But the original file, the raw or the heavily edited file, is kept in, you know, whatever crop factor I had chosen to do that image in to begin with. So unfortunately, you end up losing some space, sometimes in the top and bottom, sometimes the side, sometimes both. I try to get it as close as possible, and I try to advise my clients to go with, you know, this particular image, because when people order images from me, they don't understand crop factor necessarily. You kind of have to educate them and say, what's the space that's going on? What size are you looking for? And then we want, you know, like a poster size of 24 by 36. You say, well, it's a horizontal image. It doesn't really fit in that range, but here are some sizes within that ratio that work, and go ahead and measure it out and tell me what you think. And then I create the image accordingly.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll just add, you know, we're all friends here. I'm okay sharing that sometimes I'm bad at math. When I think, okay, I want this as a 16 by 24, I don't even want to do the division to simplify that. Is that a 4 by 3 or a, you know, 2 by 3? So I'll just go to Lightroom and type in 16 by 24. And then usually it, you know, reduces for me and gives me that aspect ratio in the crop handles. And then I just drag them as I need it. But yeah.
Well, and you know, and I'll say this too, some photos, the crop is as important as the exposure to me, like, or the subject. I mean, sometimes it is such a factor of the photo, and that might be a little bit of exaggeration, but there are times when I'm like, I really want to crop it here, and I don't care what the traditional crop values are. This is where I want to cut it off. I don't want to have to Photoshop something out to make it fit within this. I just want to make it this way. And it makes it a little trickier, but really think about that. You know, I think that's one of the number one things I see with people who are learning how to edit is the cropping. Is like, you don't need all this information over here or up here or down here, and you don't have to stick within the 2x3, you know, traditional frame that your camera tends to shoot at. Most cameras, you don't always have to stick with that, you know, because there's a rightness to. You'll get it and you'll be like, that just looks correct to me, you know? And I work a lot on that. I mean, I sit there and you'll see on some of these videos I'm putting out, I go back and forth. I'm like, no, I don't know if I like that now. I think I want a little more sky. Oh, I want a little less sky. I mean, it's a constant like battle to figure out where does it sit well. And yeah, I mean, that doesn't always fit within the standard aspect ratios.
Yeah, that's where you as the expert have to have a voice and talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
Cousin recently bought a huge print from me, and he already had a frame that he wanted to use, and so I priced it all out on fine art paper for him. And in order to fit that frame, it just really, in my opinion, jacked up the image. And I said, I don't, I can sell this to you, but I don't feel very comfortable with it. It changes the story. I would suggest stepping up and paying a little bit more for a metal print,
Mm-hmm.
that frame for another day for something else. Go metal. It's frameless at that point. You can open it later, but you can just hang it on the wall the way it shows up. And we got to get the crop factor that we wanted. And he was super happy with it. So
That's cool.
Yeah, you kind of have to just advise people through that, whether it's a client or family member or anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. Good, solid response there. Thanks, guys. Andrew wants to know if I've heard any updates on the next Nikon Z crop sensor camera. Short answer is no. David Carr, I don't know if you've heard anything.
No, I think the Z50 is still new enough,
Yeah.
and I think it's a fantastic camera. I mean,
Yep.
I know you've spoken highly of it.
Yep.
They probably don't need to do much to change that right now.
Yep.
I do think that the Pro full frame is they've got it. I mean, they've got to be working on something. Of course they are. You know, they have to be. So
yeah, we'll hear the next model. And I really think, you know, there was a lot of news about Nikon being somewhat in financial trouble towards the end of last year.
Yeah.
And their response to a lot of that is like, we are going to really simplify our product lineup. And I think they're really going to wait and see, at least at the crop sensor level, how that camera does before they come out with another. So I'd say I'd be surprised if we are less than a year away from any new crop sensor Z series.
I would agree.
And
I think it's time for them to pull another D850, like, you know, a game-changing kind of camera, which Canon sounds like they're doing that. So I don't know how much Nikon can do that against Canon, but at least that's why I was saying earlier, I think some sort of really pro mirrorless that we haven't seen from any other manufacturer, that could be a good move.
Yeah. Last question we got from Just Kyle. He's seeing a lot of hot pixels lately, starting to see them more and more frequently. So for those who don't know, hot pixels are usually bright red or bright blue. It's just a pixel that gets stuck on usually, and during a long exposure kind of shows up as very different than the surrounding pixels, because the surrounding pixels are capturing the actual light and what it's seeing, and that pixel is just bright red or bright blue. They're very small, so you don't usually see them until you start zooming in and looking for them. But he's been seeing some more of them. Do we know why that could be? I mean, usually we call them hot pixels because usually they start to show up in longer exposures when the sensor has been hot for a while, or you know, energy is flowing to it to capture the image for a longer period of time. I feel like, isn't it Dave and Allie who say they swear that if you leave your battery in when you fly, that they have seen dead pixels or hot pixels develop from that? Is that true?
Yeah. David talks about that in his book, and kind of uses the reason that, you know, this is why cameras typically are they're always shipped without batteries in them, or not on airplanes at all. You know, you get into those higher elevations, and with electronics, it's a little bit of an unknown what can happen up there. So, yeah, if you are frequently flying, absolutely take your battery out. You should do that anyway, but especially if you're traveling a lot, batteries out, memory cards out, just turn that stuff off and get it all away from each other. I don't know that would be the case for you, Kyle. I saw that question come through, and I was interested, Toby, to hear what you had to say, or Carr, if you had any information on that, because I've actually noticed that with some of my real estate photos. I don't know, a month or two ago, that I was editing a few photos, and I noticed some hot pixels that kept appearing, and I was taking those out of there. Like you said, they were really few and far between, but they were kind of in the same spots. And I got nervous. I was shooting with a Hasselblad. Yeah. But I've taken some other pictures since then, and I haven't seen them there. So maybe it was just overheating. I don't know.
Yeah, I do think over time a sensor is more likely to develop, pixels that have trouble. I certainly have them in my camera. I tell you, there are times where I look and, my camera's getting a little bit older now, but where, man, it is really noisy in some areas on longer exposures. And there are a lot of hot pixels around as well. So it's not something I would stress about a whole lot, unless it's really starting to increase, then I would worry. But I think it's just kind of natural.
Yeah, and there may be somebody in the chat room that knows a little bit more about this stuff. This is way over my head.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah.
I mean, I know there are the people that build special cooling devices for their sensors, those doing really long astrophotography type photography will actually, modify their camera in such a way that they keep the sensor at a very cold temperature. And I'm always curious when I go to Alaska and photograph, but the truth is, even in the really cold Alaska, the inside of the camera is at the sensor level is still just about as hot as it would be anywhere else because of all that energy. So I don't know. Yeah. And my drink is pretty much done. That's just melted ice down there. So I think we're done.
All right. Or we can get round two and just keep this thing going. Man.
Hold on, our picks, where we just kind of randomly share something that we're into. David Carr, I do remember what you shared last week. It was the Making of the Penguins documentary from Disney. And Chris and I watched it last night, and it was a lot of fun. One, because it took me back to Antarctica. Two, because penguins.
Absolutely.
And three, because you're watching these guys lug and carry camera gear around in these kind of ridiculously harsh conditions. And so it's very cool. It's a great suggestion. Thank you. I enjoyed it. I don't know if you noticed a lot of shots, they were using that Canon 50-1000 cinema lens. That lens costs $70,000.
Nice.
Wow. But you can get it used on B&H for $53,000.
$53,000. Yeah. Right.
That's incredible. Yeah. That show, I'm still watching stuff like that. Really. I mean, I'm such a nerd. I would rather watch how they made something than what they made a lot of times. We actually did watch the Penguin movie, and it's cute. It's funny. The little penguin's name is Steve, and it's actually a really entertaining movie. But watching how they made it was just mind blowing to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Very, very good. Yeah. So what do you got for us this week? Let's let you lead off. Living up to high standards.
Yeah, gosh, you know what? So I'm a perfectionist in a lot of ways. And I had to buy my wife a new car a couple months ago. She totaled the car she had, and which she was okay. Thankfully, she and my son were fine. But it was, it was a loss. The car was totaled. Bought her a used car. It's about 7 years old. And I love restoring things. I love getting things to look and feel like new again. And so I've been really meticulously detailing and touching up and polishing. And like, I don't know why. I've just been like, I got all this time. I'm just like, so I've been really getting this car to feel like it's brand new again. And it really does. So I don't know why. That's just fun for me.
Very cool. Very cool. Any special product that is like rocking your boat?
You know what? There's a brand called Griot's Garage. They sell it at a lot of auto parts stores now, but it used to be like an online only. They just make really good car cleaning products. It's like, it's not super expensive, but it's more than like your run of the mill. But they make really good products, and to just keep your car looking and smelling wonderful and things. I mean, it's amazing how much people will get rid of a car because one problem or because it doesn't look good anymore. It's dirty. There's a lot of times there's so much life left in it, and I just love to find that and dig it out and make it
very
great.
cool.
So
Nice.
That's been my thing.
That's good for Earth Day too. Reduce, reuse.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it's a diesel. The car I bought her is a diesel. It saves on fuel.
Yeah.
Gets great gas mileage. So
Nice.
It's been fun.
Very good. All right. Thank you for that. Steve, what do you got?
Let's see. I talked last week about the iPhone SE. We talked about it in a different segment of the show, but we're going ahead and we're ordering those. I haven't ordered them yet, but I'm working with one of our clients who works for Apple, trying to work out the trade-in thing. So I'm super excited about that as a product. What could I endorse this week? I have this friend of mine, Lance. Toby, I know you met him.
Yep.
He's a total character.
Mm-hmm.
Brother of mine. We've been good friends for quite a while, but he's over the last few years he kind of got me back into photography, and he's just one of my best friends. I love the guy. He keeps bugging me every day. He's texting me like, "Have you seen Jojo Rabbit yet? Have you seen Jojo Rabbit yet?" I'm like, dude, it's about Nazis or something, and it looks like a stupid satire, and it's just I don't think that's my thing. It's Wes Anderson's sort of film. Some of that stuff I like, but
yeah.
He's like, trust me, it's not what I expected. It's a feel-good movie. You're going to love it. And so I finally watched it the other night, and my wife and I watched it together, and I loved it. I thought it was just great. So I'll throw that out there. It starts out, it kind of seems a little disturbing to begin with. I won't give you any spoilers, but it really, you will laugh, you will probably shed a tear or two. It's a very sweet movie. It's not at all what I expected, and I was really happy that I saw it. So hopefully that drives some of you guys to watch it. I thought it was great.
Cool.
It is a good movie. I fell asleep for I think a little bit of the middle of it because I was very tired. But I really enjoyed it, and I love Taika. I think he's just brilliant these days, and I'm really looking forward to
what he's done. I can't remember.
A Hunt for Wilder People, which I've been recommending. I actually put it on my Facebook. That's kind of now my new litmus test, gentlemen. If you watch it and you don't like it, don't tell me, because I don't think I can be friends with you anymore.
What is it?
Hunt for the Wilder People.
I haven't heard of that.
Hunt for the Wilder People. Didn't he do Ragnarok also?
Yep. And he's doing Thor Love and Thunder, the next one. So I'm really excited about that too. And I thought Thor Ragnarok was great too. Yeah. So Hunt for Wilder People, that's a freebie recommendation. I've got a YouTube channel for folks, and it is Living Big in a Tiny House. Chris and I just really enjoy this YouTube channel. This guy travels around interviewing and touring people's tiny houses. And there's the realist in me is like, no, I could never live in a house that small. But it doesn't have any of the drama of like the TLC show where every time somebody walks in, they're like, oh my God, this place is much smaller than I expected. You're shopping for a tiny house. What did you expect?
Right.
Every time they walk into a house.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
That show just got to be ridiculous after a while.
Yeah, but so this doesn't have that ridiculous nature, and you just see how these people live, and of course they clean up, I think, a lot before he arrives. But it's been a fun show to watch. We enjoy it, and you also get to see how people live all over the world, because he tours all over the world in these different tiny houses, and it's just kind of cool. So that's what I got for you this week. The YouTube channel Living Big in a Tiny House.
Brian Scanlon just commented, if I keep eating at the pandemic, I won't even fit into a tiny house.
Yeah. The meme I saw the other day was somebody videoed a manatee swimming out from under a dock, and it was like, this is me coming out of my house after the pandemic.
Oh yeah.
Like quarantine's over, I can't even fit out the door to go outside.
Yeah,
I know, it's awful.
Yeah. All right. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much. Cheers to you all. Cheers to our chat room. And thank you for hanging out with us for a little bit of a longer show. But it was fun.
Yeah. You guys stuck with us. Thank you.
We'll appreciate that. And David Watts agrees. Hunt for the Wilder People is amazing. David, I knew I liked you. I knew I did. All right, everybody. Until next week, thanks so much for tuning in. And we'll be back to chat about whatever is the week's photo news. Bye-bye.